Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. For the fourth time this year, an Indigenous man has died in the custody of Winnipeg Police. And the Independent Investigation Unit is looking into how the latest death occurred. APTN's Priscilla Wolfe has the details.
Randy Cochran, who was a father of three, died on July 14th. According to a release by the Independent Investigations Unit, officers observed a man in the north end of the city who appeared to be armed and bleeding. They started a foot chase and took him into custody. Police also say the man was agitated at the time of his arrest and then became unresponsive. Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service were called. He was transported to hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Randy Cochran's cousin, Monica Murdoch, says the Health Sciences Center told her family that Cochran had a heart attack and had a high fever. She said they told her there was no other injuries on his body.
He took us in a room and started talking to us and said that Randy was, they brought Randy in about 4:30 p.m. Sunday, unresponsive already with a fever of 40. But they said that his blood was the blood of someone that no pulse.
The family weren't allowed to see the deceased because they were told he died in police custody and the case is under investigation.
They wouldn't let us see the body. We're like, can we just see him? Like, someone needs to identify him. He wasn't even identified. They just know it's Randy. Maybe, I don't know, tattoos, I don't know. We said, well, we won't touch him. We'll just look at him, you know, just let us see him. He's all alone down there in the morgue. And we said no. So we left. And
the family is hoping to have his body released soon so they can hold a funeral for him. Randy's sister Kayla is devastated.
He was a good guy. You know, everybody does things that are not so good sometimes, but he was a good person, you know, like he had 3 little girls and he was a good dad to them and he loved them so much. And he loved everybody in his family. He just had a big heart. He just always wanted to help everybody.
Since this matter involves a fatality in police custody, a request for a civilian monitor will be made to the Manitoba Police Commission. Meanwhile, the investigation by the Independent Investigation Unit is ongoing. Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A long-standing protest continues in the Mohawk community of Six Nations. It began over a month ago over concerns of the elected council. Annette Francis joins us now with an update.
Hi Dennis, I'm here in front of the administration building in Schweigen. Just weeks ago, the protesters began this protest outside the administration building. They're still here. It's still going on. Just 2 days ago, they were notified that an injunction proceedings would take place, and if they did not leave the site. So far, they say they refuse to leave the site. They're not going anywhere until some of the issues are dealt with. They want to see more meetings. They want to see, they say that an elected chief and council does not have the right to govern them. They're hoping to see the Haudenosaunee chief and council lead them. So they say they're not leaving. According to a press release, the elected chief and council continue to meet with the Haudenosaunee chief and council. They're hoping for a peaceful process and to get talks going. We did call Chief Hill for comment. She refused to go on camera. Back to you, Dennis.
Thanks, Annette. To the West Coast now, where the American company, which owns a tugboat that sank off the northwest coast of BC, has been fined $2.9 million after pleading guilty to spilling 110,000 liters of diesel. In October of 2016, the lone operator on the tug allegedly fell asleep at the helm and sank the Nathan E. Stewart tugboat. The spill occurred in the traditional fishing grounds of the Heiltsuk Nation. They are still unable to harvest traditional food in that area.
It is what we have termed and called, one of our breadbaskets of our nation. So it's somewhere where, our people will go and harvest, for the community and harvest for sustenance and food. It's been a really emotional few days. For us, we're still pursuing justice on behalf of the nation. They did have some charges with respect to the Fisheries Act and fines with respect to that and migratory birds.
And we'll have more reaction from the Heiltsuk Nation about the spill and the $2.9 million fine on tomorrow's show. Time for a quick break, and then we'll be joined by two women who weigh in on the larger conversation taking place online about Indigenous men in powerful positions harassing women. Stick around. Here's a look at Thursday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 15 in St. John's, rain and 26 for Halifax. Sun's out in Nain with a high of 18, 11 under sunny skies in Kuujjuaq. 27 in Montreal, 22 in Saguenay under sunny skies. Rain for Toronto and Ottawa with a high of 29, 23 and rain in Sault Ste. Marie. 24 under sunny skies for Thunder Bay, 26 and rain in Sioux Lookout. 19 in Churchill, 27 under the sun for Puckatawagan. Rain on the way for Winnipeg with a high of 28, sunny and 28 in Brandon. In Saskatchewan, 25 under the sun in Regina, showers and 21 in Saskatoon. A sunny high of 26 in Uranium City. Welcome back. The issue of Indigenous men in powerful positions harassing women is part of a larger conversation taking place on social media. So what should you do if it happens to you? Many women, especially on First Nations or in Indigenous organizations, feel powerless to come forward when there's no human resources department and no repercussions for the harasser. To walk us through it, host Melissa Ridgen spoke with Tasha Beads, the department chair of the Indigenous Studies Department at the University of Sudbury, who says this sort of behavior is a legacy of colonialism that needs to be addressed. And Darlene Okimesam-Sikot, she's with the Saskatoon group Women Talking Together, that focuses on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Tasha, you made a post about online harassment. What's the trend that you're seeing?
What I'm seeing on social media is a lot of young women, actually women across the ages. I'm seeing them reach out to one another. I am seeing a lot more disclosures happening publicly. There's also some lateral violence, unfortunately. But it seems to be almost overpowered by the support of people, men too, Indigenous men, Indigenous women, Indigenous grandmothers, grandfathers. Everyone seems to be supportive on some level
of the people who are coming out. Darlene, I understand that many women have come forward and about being harassed and shared that with you. How prevalent is this, and who's doing the harassment? Like, I'm not asking for names of people who are doing it, but what type of, what's a common profile of a harasser?
I'm seeing that they're men of position and power, and sometimes Indigenous women of power.
And what are some of this? What are some of the things that have been shared with you?
Predominantly from the mothers of experiences with raising, lovely Indigenous young women, and then coming of age after 19 and finishing high school, of their formative years of being approached on social media through inbox messages and snap pictures and in some profane ways, men's private parts sent to their, messenger or inbox or Instagram, whatever. And that's what I'm hearing from mothers. And their dismay with knowing who these perpetrators are that have this position of power, that what it's causing the parents to see that these people of power are, condoning and saying, no, I'm just being polite, I'm just being friendly, and I'm not going to stop my social network friendship with your daughter who's now of age. And it's really embarrassing to know that people are being bamboozled all around the country by a lot of political leaders, and it's no one's disclosing it. They're kind of brushing it aside and managing it on their own somehow. And I think that's a real crime of its own, because they're having to endure this privately. And maybe they're feeling shame that this is happening and they don't know how to stop the situation.
Tasha, do you feel that it's a different kind of ball of wax nowadays because of social media? It kind of takes, it's a buffer almost in between people the harassers and the people that they're harassing?
Yeah, I think that I've heard from a lot of the young women themselves. Like, I've received a lot of inboxes from young women with the same stories as the parents that Darlene was speaking of. And I think there's a generational gap. I think a lot of people in my generation, I'm a grandmother, I'm 50 years old, almost 50,
wow,
aging myself. But my age and up don't necessarily have the same kind of technological savvy as, a young person coming straight from high school, 19, 20, 21-year-old. And so there is no degree of anonymity on social media. There are IP addresses, our young people take snapshots. Like, there is a degree of empowerment with our youth, and there is a degree of pushing back to this type of behavior. So I think that's really important to emphasize, that there are groups occurring behind the scenes, private chat groups that are comprised of Indigenous women and girls and two-spirit people who are gender fluid, people who are self-identifying, and they're supportive groups. And in those groups, disclosures are occurring, and there's also the opportunity for women to. There's always been kind of the anti-network. That's what we call it at the grassroots level. And I think the anti-network has become a lot stronger. It's becoming a sisterhood. But I also want to emphasize, too, that Indigenous men are also stepping up, young Indigenous men who are saying this is not a part of our future. And social media is a space where we think of it as it is open for predatory behavior. There is that opportunity for it to occur, but there's the opportunity for that pushback, and I think that's what we're seeing now. I don't think social media is going to be a safe place for predators any longer, because our own youth have the technological savvy to be able to trace those IP addresses, to do those Skype, to do those screenshots. So the social media landscape is changing, and it's one that's been empowered by Indigenous youth.
Darlene, I'm curious, what is the advice that you give to people who come to you as they're living this reality?
Well, about 4 different ways. The first thing is, do not engage. When you are getting approached over and over, in this one case that we've been seeing over the news, her situation went over a year and a half. So at that point, she might have did some engaging and just being polite, right, on social media. But in that time, gather some evidence about this behavior. And do not blame yourself for the situation. A lot of our people are very kind-hearted, and they'll say hello and how are you, and oh, I'm not interested, and then that's that. But then also to inform and assemble a support team where you have that little network that Tasha was talking about. And they do have that. Like, my daughter has shown me ways that their circle of girls have been able to just say, oh, well, this is a pest, and they all notify each other who they are, who these people are, and to even work on your social media, how to change your passwords, how to set your privacy. And then for them, because they're getting more media savvy and tech savvy, they're able to teach the older generation, like myself. Like, there's a lot of things I could learn about being more tech savvy. And to use any of the resources that are out there that might seem like this is getting to be too much, what do I do? There's so many resources out there.
I want to thank you ladies both so much for joining us to share your thoughts and your advice. This means a lot. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you can find more on that story over at our website, aptnnews.ca. Coming up, Ibamatung First Nation is the latest community to declare a state of emergency over problems with its water supply. We'll hear from the chief after the break. Here's a look at the rest of Thursday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. Showers and 24 for Fort McMurray and High Level. Sunny and 28 for Medicine Hat, a high of just 13 with rain in Red Deer. Sunny on the west coast, 21 in Victoria, 23 in Vancouver, 22 in showers for Fort Nelson, a high of 14 with rain for Dease Lake, 23 and rain in Old Crow, Beaver Creek, and Whitehorse. Sun's out for Fort Liard, Trout Lake, and Yellowknife with a high of 25. 9 above for Sax Harbor, 23 under sunny skies in Colville Lake, 23 as well for Arviette, 16 in Chesterfield, 8 in Cambridge Bay, 13 for Resolute, 12 in Joe Haven. Welcome back. Ibamatung First Nation in Northern Ontario has declared a state of emergency. They say high levels of a chemical called THM is causing concern. Willow Fiddler spoke with Chief Harvey Yesno.
Your community recently declared a state of emergency for water issues. What can you tell me about the water issues that your community is facing?
Well, it's probably a accumulation of issues, water being one of them. Our community declared the boil water advisory 18 years ago, August 1st. So since that time, it's been attempts to try to address that, and so finally we have a new water treatment plant that's under construction, soon to be commissioned. So hopefully that will address a lot of the issues. But the latest, the last report I got was the one that was alarming. When I started seeing the reports, how long these THMs at the levels they were, that to me, and then I got information from health officials about that, because I had to get educated on that as well. And sustained prolonged use. So I asked the question, what do you mean prolonged? How long? Yes, it could be 20 years. I said, in layman terms, please tell me, well, what do you mean? It's like a slow poison that could cause bladder cancer or ovarian cancer. So we're already 18 years into the boil water advisory. Coupled with this, too, we know now that the new treatment center is going to put a lot of pressure on our lift station, which is part of our sewage outflow to the lagoons and that. We've had several in the last 20 years overflows into the bay and the lake where we get our drinking water. So, and then coupled with that, we've had a lot of problems with our aging generator sets. We're on diesel generation sets, and so that compounds the problem, because electricity is needed to keep the pumps going. And so anytime we have a power outage, we have to get a portable generator to get started on a lift station, which is the main one that pumps the sewage to the lagoon. So with water and sewage and electricity, all those are three services that the community relies on 24/7. It's not like your Monday to Friday.
Any plans to monitor symptoms, anything like that?
I wanted numbers about what I would consider people that would be most impacted by water. And almost immediately I got a list of, we got 35 babies that are less than a year old. We got 156 children from 13 months to 5 years. We got 17 prenatals. We got 52 elders and 3 on kidney dialysis. And these, the nurse in charge considered the most vulnerable. So that's a significant number. You know, you're talking about 20% of the population. We're almost 1,600, you know, in the community.
You had a meeting with Indigenous Services Canada today. What are you asking for, and what have you heard that they're prepared to commit right now?
In some ways, it looks like it's patchwork, which we don't believe that's a solution. You know, we call those Band-Aid solutions, but we wanted to ensure that the transition from our old system to the new, that people can have confidence in that. If that lift station, particularly the main one, is not upgraded, we are going to have problems with overflows at that lift station. I just hope because we declared an emergency, they're not going to fast track this. We want to make sure that an orderly steps are taken. That you know, they don't rush into this, you know, that because we can't risk that, you know.
To Attawapiskat now, where it's been just over a week since the Northern Ontario community declared a state of emergency over its drinking water. Today, Timmins James Bay MP Charlie Angus and NDP Justice critic Tracy Ramsey will meet with community members to discuss solutions to the crisis. Attawapiskat residents have asked for military intervention. They want the Armed Forces Disaster Assistance Response Team to provide them with clean water. The community of 2,000 people has been grappling with water problems for years. Angus lays the blame at the feet of the government, saying they failed First Nations people. And some good news now coming from crews trying to free 3 entangled North Atlantic right whales in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Rescuers managed to remove more of the gear from one of the whales on Tuesday, but they haven't been able to completely free the animal. Crews were also able to cut away a rope that was dangling from the mouth of a second whale. Efforts to free the endangered animals are still ongoing. Well, that is your APTN National News for this Wednesday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and stay up to date with the latest by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey, look, he's taking a picture.